Welcome back to Curious Comedy, a podcast made to inform and entertain, to enjoy and rack your brain. Oh, and our name, I'm Tom.
I'm Jala.
And this is Curious Comedy. Let's get into it.
Great.
Off to a great start.
Yeah. Yeah, you have such a nice voice that I just want to continue to listen to you.
Yeah, you were charmed.
Yeah, I was charmed. Indeed,
Yeah,
that is
like
the
a
word.
snake flute.
Yeah. Almost like a snowflake. So, I wanted to say let's start with our first, but that is also our only subject. So,
Yeah.
but no worries, we will handle it quite extensively.
Yes, a subject-specific episode.
Wow, look at that. If there's a name for it, it should be special, right? So let's talk about Twitter, because a lot of things happened, and not only with like Twitter as a company, but also some people buying it and a lot of people having a personal opinion about it, and their interests are influenced to a certain degree. So it's quite a broad subject. And we also have both our personal opinions about it, so I'm curious. So just to give a general introduction, right? What happened? Twitter was a publicly traded company, so anyone could just buy shares in it. And Elon Musk, our big friend, with some whole saga around it, of course, ultimately acquired Twitter. And let's talk a little bit about the why and the plan, right? So why? Yeah, because he is, I think this is the time, because the Bitcoin maximalists are dying. So let's call Elon.
Hey, listen, let's leave that for next week, huh?
Yeah. Let's call Elon the free speech maximalist, right? So we at least have one or two. So and he wants to create like a digital town square, right, where people can like engage and debate. That is in essence what he wants. A plan he didn't really have, and therefore it was a
good old Elon.
Yeah. There was a period in which he thought that maybe it wasn't the smartest thing to acquire Twitter, but he had to, right? Because he already made an offer. That's how some rules work. So. Right now, what is his plan? Because he's like working, as he said it himself, like around the clock to fix it, which is not that fun to be honest. Because
no, but it makes sense. I mean, you're overtaking like one of the biggest companies in the world right now. So.
Yeah, social media.
Social media companies.
Yeah. Okay. So, but indeed, the plan. So, Twitter had around 240 million active monthly users, which means that they are monetizable, right? That's so you can make money out of it via revenue predominantly. Now, like with the old Twitter, they didn't really care how much bots there were on Twitter, and the bot issue is like the main thing, because as long as bots are counted as monthly monetizable users, Twitter would make more money the more bots there were, right?
Yeah.
Because they would have a higher count of the monthly monetizable users. But Musk doesn't want to be as dependent on the ad revenue, as he wants to create a platform that creates value for the users, and especially the free speech. And so he doesn't want advertisers to influence the platform in one way or another, and therefore he needed to create like a new revenue stream.
Yeah.
And this is done via the subscription, and the benefits are
the verified check.
Yeah, the verified check, and it's like a subscription base, a subscription fee, and the benefits of this are like twofold, and one is like because it's like a more predictable revenue stream, and the second is that you don't have to dance to someone else's tunes, or in other words, you do not have to act in like the commercial interest of the advertisers.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That
so
is
you cannot
like,
be lobbied.
Exactly, and that is what you saw was like super important, because the moment Elon Musk took over, General Motors, Volkswagen, and a couple of other super big companies, suspended their ad spending on Twitter, because a billionaire took over, and maybe not the same guidelines and rules would apply, right?
Yeah,
so you could immediately see the effects of that, and so I think it's like super smart. But yeah, let's dive a little bit deeper, because I think it was last week, and it was mind blowing for me, that like the US was like investigating Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter for potential national security risks. And I thought like this is like not absurd per se, but to say the least extraordinary, right? Because like Twitter was a publicly traded company, and so indeed anyone could buy like shares in Twitter. And to be completely clear, the US government didn't. Now, the Qatari investment fund did invest in Twitter and held and now still holds assets or shares in like the privately owned Twitter, where like Elon Musk is at the helm, right?
Oh, so they're balling compared to America on two fronts now.
Yeah. So and let's talk indeed about that. So
soccer, come on. I've made football. Oof, I hope I just didn't. Yeah, let's not get into that. Please continue.
I hope this episode is not broadcast in America, but we will make sure of that.
Well, we have 3% American viewers. I think we all know who that is.
There goes our ad revenues, huh? So no, two questions, or like two main subjects, and like the first is like more of a general question. So how come that the US is seeing Twitter as a national security asset right now? And especially like in the comparison to, wasn't this clear with the Cambridge Analytica scandal or the storming of the Capitol? So what makes that Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter is an even more intriguing event, right?
Yeah.
And the second question would be like, okay, how to make the platform in general interesting and keep the right balance between everyone having his own opinion without the platform being full of hate. And there we both saw like a super interesting, or a couple of interesting interviews between Jordan Peterson, Piers Morgan, but also Andrew Tate.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get into that, when it comes to your first question, what makes Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter an even more intriguing event? The fact that the U.S. government is stepping in, right?
Yeah.
The one effect that we've been able to see, backtracking a little more even, is the verify check that you mentioned before. I mean, the effect that has had, ideologically, it's quite a good idea, right? And removing the bots and then having a revenue stream which is more predictable, all great things. But what it has also caused is that anybody could just open an account, pretend to be a very famous person or company, and say some things that are untrue or bordering criminal, depending on their effect. So you could see there was definitely some risk there, and that is the only way that I can see that you can make a valid case for the U.S. government stepping in. And otherwise, it's saltiness. But what do you think?
I mean, I know it's a joke, but I do think that saltiness is like kind of an argument, and I don't know what the real reasoning is, but I think it's a weird way of reasoning, because if the U.S. government really thinks that Twitter is a national security asset, then it shouldn't allow the asset to be for sale in the first place.
No, fair enough.
And then the US government should nationalize Twitter, which means buying all shares if they see Twitter as a public good, in the sense that it is fundamental to our society and all members of society derive value from it to a certain degree. Yeah. Right? So for me, it's like the one way or another. And now you are like trying to benefit both sides, and exactly you can't. You miss a train almost. So. Yeah, indeed, that's a saltiness, right?
Yeah, it's the thought just popped into my mind, which feels rather ironic, is that I honestly think that it would be safer for us to not have Twitter in the hands of the U.S. defense than it would be to have it in the hands of the U.S. defense. So that is.
And why is that?
Yeah, because to make it as plain as possible is because they will weaponize it. They will find a way to weaponize it. The U.S. defense, or U.S. government for that matter. I mean, one and the same, let's be real. But I think yeah, of course, we never know the true intentions of Elon Musk, but I do believe that he is making genuine steps towards a more free speech advocated platform, and he is with definitely some hurdles in the way, making that a more realistic thing, like by the week, I would say, almost. So there's a lot of hope for us there. But when when you look at the U.S. government track record, it is not so ideal.
No, but to be fair, I don't think that the U.S. defense would really weaponize it, and I cannot like argue to an extreme that I can tell you or guarantee you that they would never do so. But even if they would do so, to be completely frank, I rather have the U.S. defense weaponize it than almost any other country in the world. Like, I know that
because they'd be the best to do it.
Yeah, no. Listen, to be fair, I mean, I think that the U.S. and especially like the military complex is getting a lot of shit, right? And like, to be fair, I think to a certain degree that's fair. I mean, they make a lot of money by selling bullets, and how strange is that? Because a bullet is not used to read a book, right, or to cultivate yourself, or for that matter. So it's always to end a life, or to at least, yes, the best argument you could give is like to defend something, right? So, but then I believe that you can still defend some things better than by using a bullet. So I think that is fair, but I do think that a lot of other countries in this world that are far more sinister than the U.S. defense, that have far less of a morale, because that is like almost what you get with like the demonization of the U.S. defense, right? You get like almost the idea, and I think a lot of people, especially in the Western world, are thinking like that the U.S. is like the most evil organization in the world. And I can tell you, not that I know that because I'm working for them or so, but if you've ever talked to people that were close by or did anything related to the U.S. military, you know that they are a lot of people working for those organizations are not giving their lives to benefit one or a certain billionaire in the U.S. Those are missions that are truly helping people in other countries or in America itself. And that is not to say that there is no misconduct or misuse. I'm not saying that, but I do think that if you would, let's say, for example, put Putin at the realm of the military complex, you have a much worse case. Yeah. And the same counts for a lot of Chinese officials. And I bet there are some African leaders, authoritarian leaders, that you don't want at the realm of a powerful institution. So I get you, but I do think that the U.S. is the one to weaponize it in the best manner. You're completely right about that, but is also the one with the highest morale to not do so, in comparison to other countries.
Sure, I think that's a valid point you make. I mean, there's definitely people I would see them have Twitter and be be more worried of. Wow, that came out super smooth. But what I think, and I think this point still stands, is that America, the U.S. government, if they would get their hands in the business and they could make moves, they would be the ones to lobby it in such a way that would be discreet and that we wouldn't know about it, and that 10 years later, when when Elon Musk's son buys Twitter from his dad, he will leak those documents, right? The same way that Elon Musk is leaking documents right now about how Twitter was being misused. So the thing is that, and this is all just purely theoretical, but I would think perhaps like a Russia or a country that's a little bit less evolved but has some tribal warfare still going on, won't be as clever and manipulative in their use, but will just be outright propagandistic, right? You will log onto Twitter and see a hammer and a sickle together, or you will instantly see flags and saying we are saving the villages and making it super apparent. While I would suspect the American government to be more behind the scenes, and in that way, I feel they're almost more dangerous.
Yeah, no, I if that would be true, I completely agree. But if you look at the facts, the opposite is true, because there is no country in which like the reasoning behind top policy is written in books. If you would write the same book as you have saw in Russia with Stalin, if you saw with Lenin, and now you see with Putin, they will just kill you. If you write things down that they don't want people to know, they will get you. I mean, of course you could say the same for Edward Snowden, right? Or you could say the same for Julian Assange. They also made some information which was classified available to the general public, and therefore the US government is coming to take them. And listen, I condemn that to the fully. I mean, I will. I'm able to give my whole wealth to the people that are like Julian Assange, are like an Edward Snowden, to defend the free speech and to make private information that is in the public's interest public. And I do stand by that. But I think that there are a couple of countries like Russia, but also China, a perfect example, in which you cannot write things down in which like the top, or let's say the establishment, disagrees. And if you look at, okay, to what if free speech or the access to information would be, how far off the let's say the current establishment can you, how far can you go off, right? That would be an indication.
How much can you deviate?
Yeah, how much? Thank you. How much can you deviate? That would be like our measurement of free speech. Then America has the highest free speech in the world. And maybe that it doesn't matter where you look in a country. Almost in any country, like 1 to a maximum of 5% is reading books, and therefore there are just a few people, and that still holds true in America, that really knows what is going on. But if you read like the biographies of the ex-presidents of America, you can see, I mean, was Kennedy that was writing down the military-industrial complex is getting too big, too powerful? I mean, the fact that 6 years later people are saying the same sentence the US president said back then is only possible because the US military complex didn't do anything of everything in their power to make sure that book would be destroyed. And the KGB will make sure that happens. It's like the special agents of Russia. And the same holds true for a lot of different countries. If you really go too far in the sense of making, and the same holds also true for America. We just gave that example with Julian Assange. But I think like general opinions that you like the U.S. government is not has a different opinion than other high people in establishments, making that transparent. That is something unique in the Western world. And we have talked about many times Khashoggi, which is just a journalist, which like the Saudi Arabian crown prince made him disappear. I mean, that's a Western Turkish journalist that disappeared by the policemen, the special forces of Saudi Arabia. There you got it. That is a 2018 or 17, whatever example, but just a 21st century example of how you don't have free speech. And if you compare like the whole, let's say like the laws and establishments and the way of functioning the establishment does in Saudi Arabia, and you compare that to the establishment in like America, I can tell you that it's much more fair in America than it is in Saudi Arabia. But you cannot live at a couple of different places at the same time, so you're always comparing yourself to people that are better off. But sometimes I think for especially Americans it is true that 95% of the people is worse off.
No, I take your point. I think you've actually convinced me somewhat because when you take into consideration the sheer amount of speech that will be prohibited and removed, and the censorship that will follow once one of those let's just say Russia and China for the sake of it would overtake Twitter, would own it. I think they will bend it in such a way that only their voice will be heard, and will make it look like to their population like it's the only truth that there is being spoken, because they've already been indoctrinated and propagandized against for years. So why would they think any different, right? And then if you got a big ass platform like reinstating that truth, and it's supposed to be the internet where the free flow of information is possible. I think you make a good point.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think that's also the reason why it's super easy for any other country than the United States to shit on the United States, because you can always say, look at that society using drugs, sexualizing women. You can make it, and you can always find an extremer example in American society than in any other society, but that is. You can see that as something which is like bad, so look how stupid the Americans are, or look at how free they are. Because that you don't see it in your country doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in your country, it is just not shown to you. And what is worse? And that is your point, so that's why I say it's the opposite. I have rather a society in which a lot of bullshit is shown, and I see, Jesus Christ, but I know that this is the whole truth, then I think, wow, society is like super, but I'm just having a proper, I don't know how to say that in proper English, but like I got a manipulated view of how this true society looks like, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that makes sense. And I think there is a lot of things about America that are admirable that aren't put on the table before the problems that America faces. But I genuinely think it's because the country is so media heavy. Everything about the country is broadcasted. If something happens in the elections, everybody knows. If some major scandal happens, everybody knows. Jeffrey Epstein, everybody knows, right? And these things are just, whether it's by Netflix, whether it's by YouTube, or whether it's by any other social media, if anything big happens in America, the world will know about it. And that's, it's two sides of a coin, right? It's the one side is like, yes, great, we see everything, so we know all the good and all the bad, we can instantly see it, but at the same time it's like, but then when does freedom of speech and privacy come into question, right? They start mashing. So on that point I'm a little fuzzy, since I quite care for my privacy at times, but I think if you live a normal life, shouldn't be too much of a problem. But okay, what do you say we move on from now? I think we have taken enough of a sidestep.
Let's take the listeners to not our solution, but like a solution we heard, what we like super agree with to a certain extent. Let's elaborate, right?
And which is
so the question, maybe to just recall the question, right?
Yes.
It's about Twitter, and like Elon Musk is like working on it to make it better. We just described, any company needs to make money, sure, but not via or predominantly via advertisements. Then how? Subscriptions, But now, how can we make Twitter a better platform in a sense that how it was? I was not on Twitter because, and I'm still not on Twitter because I do think that it's like a lot of bullshit in there. And now is the question, but how should you change it so that anyone may join? So you are not excluding people, because that is like the basis, but still uphold the value of the platform, which is like to engage and debate, right? And to change or to have a conversation, to change information in the broadest sense possible.
Exactly.
So now let me introduce it by I'm not sure if it was like at least I think it's a combination between Elon Musk, Piers Morgan, and maybe a couple of other people, and our personal opinions. But it was like a proposal to divide like the comment section on the basis of intensity, and give people an option to choose like kind of like which game mode they want to play.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so it's like back to the basics. Like we know that from video games that you maybe have like 3 or 5 different game modes, from easy to hard.
Yeah.
And you can just play the game mode that you prefer.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, and that is like kind of the same thing. So let's say if they want to be friendly or to play friendly and warm, they get to see the most friendly part of the comment section. All the way to hell, where you will see like everything, right?
Sure.
And like the idea is, and I think that was Jordan Peterson or it was Elon Musk, but I really agree with this, and I think it's like a super important point. So bear with me because I've got a short rant. Is that like 3% of the people spew poisonous venom and determine the course of the debate?
I believe that was Elon Musk.
Yeah, it was one of those people, but it's not my own sentence. They said it, and I completely agree with it. So, but now, so using the system of game mode, so to speak, so by dividing the comment section, you still enable the 3% to spew their venom without having them determine or distract the debate and the arguments most of the people want to discuss. And even the people that decide to select the most friendly game mode always have the option to look at what the people in the hell section have to say. So in my mind, it's like a win-win.
I think it's a very tricky thing to get right, though. I think it's an extremely difficult thing because separating that 3% that spews venom is like putting them in a little box and saying, hey, listen, you can have your little fun and people can look at you and you can interact with them, but only if they choose. I think those 3% of people will feel outraged and perhaps discriminated against.
Why?
Yeah, because why is my opinion, even though it may be a bit more extreme, so extreme that I shouldn't be able to go with the other people in their game mode?
No, it's just that you have a different opinion about what is friendly than someone else does. You have a different opinion what a critical note is.
Yeah,
it's a sense of definition. I mean, we can what I think is big, you don't have to find big. That is the same. And I'm just saying, okay, up until a meter is big, and then right, it's just a definition.
Exactly. But then say my track record shows that I have been making some extreme or conflicting arguments.
Yeah.
They triggered somebody, whatever. Now I am flagged, let's call it, by Twitter and saying, okay, you've made some of these statements, which means that we're going to remove your comments from the top section for the people that don't want to see those type of comments. Say my next comment isn't anything like that, it's just a normal comment. I say something like, oh, I really like these flowers, I think they're a beautiful pair, you should wear them more often. Just something basic. Would my comment then still be perceived as coming from somebody who has a negative track record, or will it be individually held? And I think that's where the problem starts to come in, because you cannot individually check every single tweet. Nobody can.
No, but I do think that you can make a framework, and then your argument still holds to a certain degree in the sense that it isn't a perfect system. You're right about that. But right now, it's also not a perfect system. And so the question is not, is it a perfect system? The question is it an improvement?
Yeah, is it better?
Is it better? And I would now join Twitter. With this system, I would join. Why? Because now it's happening that the 3%, what you're saying, is still feeling outrage. You have to remember that those 3% is the 3% that is never content. Never. It's never extreme enough. Or then it's too woke, right? So, I mean, those 3% are just people with an like extreme opinion, and you could like, you already know that those people themselves don't find their opinion to be an extreme. So, if you would like keep it to the individual to determine, okay, is my opinion extreme or not? You don't have like an objective
way of saying, okay, this is maybe hateful, this isn't. And it is, I have a way of, and I think you could also describe it as a way of communicating. Like, I personally prefer to go straight. And sometimes you are like, people are feeling uncomfortable. But I rather have to make people sometimes uncomfortable, but truly say what I think. But there are people, and I had this discussion many times in my life, where people say, yeah, I still have maybe the same opinion as you, but I prefer to hold that little bit to myself, to not be as straight, because I have a feeling that is a better way of conveying a message. Yeah, I mean, that is like taste, right? You can have a debate about it, but in the end there is no good or no bad. And so I think that it is then fair to just say, okay, if we just take all the comments all people would make, then you have extremes in them. Doesn't matter who says what, but in the end you will have extremes. And those extremes are 5% or less. Yeah, if you just make at least that distinction, and you still allow those people to have an opinion, but not that anyone also has to be confronted with that, that I can choose to play a different game in which I see those comments as last, it's like a win-win for both parties. Because like the people who are the 3% now, I do feel like they have more of a platform in which they are heard by the people that want to listen to them. So in other words, they aren't confronted as many times with people that are just like hateful to them because they are hateful. And that is like what we talked about, this is what we talked about a few weeks ago, that you get an extreme on an extreme of an extreme. No, I didn't say that. That is my personal opinion. I thought that I said that last week, but I didn't. But I think, let me go to that, that the 3% are part of people that feel unheard. So let me take you with me. If we are talking about the 3%, we are talking about the hateful speech. We are talking about the extremes, right? And I believe that like much of the most extreme speech is said not because it accurately reflects their opinion, but is rather said to highlight another perspective or to bring some nuance. And that's why I just say like you get an extreme on an extreme, right? And if you feel, and I do this myself, that you think there is just a disproportional value given to certain arguments or way of reasoning on one side of the spectrum, then you bring in an extreme argument on the other side of the spectrum to bring back some balance or nuance. Right? So the more clustered arguments are on one side of the spectrum, the more extreme the counter arguments will be. And then to counter the counter perspective, you will give an even more extreme perspective or argument. And with like a discussion that gets extremer every argument as a result. And this is exactly what is happening on Twitter. And this is why I'm not part of it, right? And then the problem is, of course, like the escalating nature of this dynamic, but also that the people that give these extreme arguments feel justified because people will agree with them, because in every discussion you can counter an argument with an extreme that holds true. Yeah, right? So in the end, extremes are the exception to the rule, and so winning via extremes is the easiest.
Yeah.
And so winning with nuanced arguments where you can still acknowledge the valuable arguments others are contributing, but you're still able to defend your stance via persuasion and arguments is like the most challenging but also the most rewarding.
No, I believe so. I think the only way that I think that's critical thinking in a sense is if you cannot have an argument which you have tried to counter with other preconceptions and other arguments, is there another way this could be true, then you don't have an argument. And that's what you need to do, and otherwise you can just keep throwing extremes at each other, and like you said, it's just gonna devolve into straight hate speech towards each other.
But by making this distinction, then you can then you can see the distinction as not only a game mode or a way of communicating, but also as how extreme do I want to argue something?
Yeah.
Do I have a lot of knowledge? Yeah, then perhaps I want to have a nuanced debate. And then I don't want my feed to be filled with people talking about the extremes, which in the end is just a lack of knowledge.
No.
And I'm not. Sometimes I'm here maybe, or I want to educate someone and tell them, okay, I do think that that's not maybe a good opinion or whatever, that this is the truth. But sometimes I'm not sure myself if I'm holding the truth, and I want to have an in-depth debate. But then I want that to have with other people that also have nuanced arguments, and because that is related, in my opinion, most of the times, or experience to like a degree of knowledge. And I think by separating the comment section is also a way of saying, okay, how much knowledge do you really have about the subject? Because you can see there is a strict correlation or a strong correlation between like the likelihood of talking in extremes and the amount of knowledge that you have, and it is like negative. So the more knowledge you have, the less the likelihood of talking in extremes, and like the less value you have, the more likelihood of talking in extremes.
Yeah.
Because it's like you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you have a little bit of if you don't have any knowledge, then you for sure know that you don't have any information. But the problem becomes when you have a little bit of information, because then you think that you know the whole truth, while in reality you just possess like a tiny part of it. And those people are like the most difficult, but also the most dangerous, because they do think that they hold and possess. And I think Tate is Andrew Tate is a perfect example of that. That he's right in a lot of things, but definitely doesn't hold the whole truth or sees like everything that is important, and therefore thinks that he is a god. While a lot of people that are much smarter look at him and are think like, how can you be so stupid? And that is like, I think.
Okay, so I'm in agreement for the most part that splitting the comment section into things and allowing for a more nuanced debate with more arguments and actual reasoning would be a good thing for Twitter. I also can't wait for the memes for the dark side of Twitter. But you happen to mention one of my favorite people of all time, Andrew Tate.
Yeah, I thought I did.
So when you take into consideration people like him, and let's put in Jordan Peterson as well, since we have a small segment on him also, how do the new platform guidelines treat them? Since Tate is known to have quite extreme takes, Jordan Peterson is at times also been known to take quite extreme takes. Would you want to see them on your feed or not?
Yeah, I would, but I think that would happen, and if you would organize the company in such a manner we just described it, so by just let people decide a game mode, and if that is like binary, so you have two options, easy, hard. If you have like cold, normal, warm, whatever, or 5 or 10, whatever the options of your gameplay, but so you make a distinction.
Can't wait to see what that skill's gonna look like.
What I think that will happen ultimately is that GP Jordan Peterson is already nuanced. So of course. So when you see maybe YouTube shorts or TikToks, then you see like the most extreme things that you're saying, but that is most of the time taken out of context, and it's really annoying. Because you miss like the whole point he's trying to say. He maybe says it in like the sentence you're seeing or you hear, but that is not like the meaning behind it. That is hidden in the context you're not hearing. So I do think that let's say Jordan. So let's start with Jordan Peterson. He is kind of a nuanced guy. Therefore, it's like interesting to argue with him because it's quite hard to win in an argument because he could in many situations understand your point but still holds a different opinion because that is an in-depth discussion.
That is strength.
You are valuing like the weight of your arguments depending on some rational rational reasonings or virtues or values, whatever, right? Now let's take Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is of course like an extremer guy, for sure. But I think that he has to make a choice. Before he was banned, he was super extreme. When you listen to some podcasts, he's then telling like people, yeah, but I already know that I was going to be cancelled. Okay, let's assume that is true. Let's assume that he is not lying. Then he's also saying, okay, and therefore because I knew that, I was already preparing on making some more nuanced arguments. Like for example, I would never help a guy, right? Because I would never touch his lips or whatever. I don't watch the guy, but you know what I mean. And then he's like, yeah, of course, if my brother would die, and of course I would help. And that is a nuance. So he is already doing that, and I think this is exactly why it's useful, because in the beginning, let's take the Andrew Tate before the ban and after the ban. Before the ban, he's not nuanced. Now he's more nuanced. Then we say
that's fair.
Then before the ban, he was an extremist, and he would be like in the section with like his 5%. Then he would see and he would get annoyed by the reactions he would get, because I mean, if you ask a stupid question, you will get a stupid answer. And so when he talks to his audience, with the extremes only counted as audience, then you will see that he will get annoyed. And if he's not going to act more nuanced and also attracting and having a discussion with the more nuanced people, he will himself delete them from Twitter because he gets so annoyed.
Okay, great point. However, I caught something.
Okay.
Towards the end, and I want to call you on it. See what you think. So. I know you mentioned before, I don't know if it was on the podcast or private conversation, but...
Oh, be careful.
Yeah. We're going to get into it.
Go ahead.
Peak life into Jala.
Yeah.
So, you talked about the effect that an echo chamber could have. If you have the most extreme content all in one place, then it will be an echo chamber. The most extreme views will keep growing, and it will become a cesspool of hateful comments and not well thought out arguments. How do you think that this ability for Andrew Tate then to be in a position where only that 5% hears him with the extreme take, how would Twitter mitigate that problem of creating that echo chamber?
Yeah, you don't have to, because the thing is natural selection. Because if you, it's for real. No, for real. The solution.
I'm sorry, it was just the way you said it.
Yeah, but you just have to let it live. Because it will die out in itself eventually. I truly believe that, because if you would take so let's say there are 10 people in the comment section of the extremes. Now let's say that the average, so they all have an extreme factor, I will call it, on a scale 1 to 10. We assign random values to it. Now we can say, okay, on average, the extreme factor is 5. Now, anyone higher than a 5% than a 5 thinks that it is soft, right? So if you have a 6 and you see a 5, you think, could be a little bit more extreme, because I don't agree, right? Sure. So they are dissatisfied to a certain extent. They will search for something more extreme. But everyone below that will get a little bit annoyed. Because they are like, bro, this is kind of extreme.
It's a little out there.
It is a little bit, you missed the nuance. And so what will happen, I believe, is that those people will maybe at first start discussing with the guy or the woman who is having an extreme thought, okay, maybe we can find some common ground, but then would shortly will be aware of the fact that an extremist tends not to adjust and change their way of reasoning, and is sometimes, and most of the times, not based on rational arguments, and therefore that's why they hold those extreme opinions. And so everyone who has a less extreme opinion or is more rational will leave the discussion. and will search for a better debate, which they will find in the more nuanced comment section. And once you have just sneak peeked at the comment section, which was like warmer, let's say, more nuanced, you will get like, whoa, wow, this is like much better for me at least.
Sure,
and so I think that a lot of people are like living in their bubble, but that is how social media is. But once, and this could be a perfect way, once you allow yourself, because of frustration, of whatever the argument is, to allow yourself to look at, okay, what do more nuanced people have to say, you get so much more, not only warmth, but also knowledge, and you better understand things, and you see, people with completely different opinions, whereas in the other section it was just a lot of different people with almost all the same opinion based on nothing. And now you have a lot of different people with different opinion based on something. Which is more interesting for you.
Yeah, no, I do actually agree that it's more interesting, for sure.
And so it's a natural selection, and then your argument could maybe still hold that in the end 1% or 0.5% or at least some percentage will be discontent. But in the end, it will always get to the same story I just told you, and that is that there is an average. Everyone above the average is discontent because it should be extreme, and everyone below it wants more extreme. And so in the end, everyone will move to...
Yeah, but the more I think about it, the more I can see it as like... Yeah, I hesitate to use the word, but that's almost like a perfect union of free speech and user satisfaction.
Yeah, I think that is a very accurate way of describing it.
And given that he can accurately, get the platform to work in such a manner, I think it can be incredibly promising. I'm really curious to see what happens.
Because if that change would be implemented, would you join? Would you go on Twitter?
I probably would. At least to give it a check. At least to give it a look and see what it's like. I wouldn't go as far as to say that I'd be an avid user immediately, but depending on how well it works, I would definitely give it a shot and perhaps become a frequent user. But
did you ever give it a shot before?
I've thought about it, but I heard stories and saw the way that people were interacting on the platform, and it always felt it felt like something I wanted to distance myself from, because I heard stories about like a girl that I knew that would go on Twitter and like have conversation about gay rights and things of that nature to Islamic communities, to people in Islamic communities. And it was from her side, it started at least as open debate. I know she can get quite fiery and feisty as well, so I'm sure it devolved from her side as well at some point. But it will go as far as that they would look up her address, dox her, call her place of work, tell her that something was wrong, and it would go so far that I was just like, what in the heck am I hearing? This is a place that I want to stay so far away from.
Yeah, fair enough.
For to get persecuted for trying to give your opinion. Yeah, it went incredibly far, and it seemed very toxic. So I don't want to get involved in that because I know it will affect me in some way. Yeah. So perhaps this could be a solution, but I'm to be convinced. But I really hope he does convince me.
Yeah. But it's like I think it's super interesting that you say this, because I think this is like a great example of what of a couple of things that sometimes go wrong in our society, I think, and I think this is a great example of that, because you can see again that we tend as people to change our environments to make sure that some absurd behavior isn't possible anymore. While we in the end all know that it's the absurd behavior that you need to talk about, because you can change the environment unlimited, but that doesn't change the fact that some people could still have some absurd behavior.
Yeah, corruption will leak in.
Yeah, no, right? And it's like the same, and I feel that like, this is a Twitter example. So a girl has an opinion, another group doesn't agree with it. That is in essence what's all about. Then the fact that they are going after her personal address, the fact that you are doing that isn't, of course, and I know I understand you're saying that, right? But isn't Twitter's fault. Twitter is just a social media medium that makes it possible for those parties to communicate with each other. The fact that they are going, or they are using her Twitter account to retrieve some personal information, to go outside of the platform to confront her with ideas she has set on the platform, and everything thereafter is like, has nothing to do with Twitter, but everything with the behavior and the mentality of the people using it.
Yeah.
And it's like the same, like we live in a safe country still, and I hope that will be true for as long as I live. But I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly the same. Now you can walk on the street and you just assume that is normal. Now I can guarantee you, the more maybe trouble there exists, or the more let's say sad situations that occur on the street, will lead to a situation in which you feel more and more uncomfortable on the street, right? Of my girlfriends here in the Netherlands, I know few that will go or bike, walk, whatever, alone after 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Which, where I'm coming from in the Netherlands, that is super reasonable to do so.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you asked 25 years ago, would you? I think the answers would have been completely different as well. I think it's been a relatively recent development.
Exactly, and that is the same. So then you see, okay, so the situation is again super simple.
The environment is the same.
And now you say, okay, people are having some behavior which is absurd, annoying people in the broadest sense possible on the street, which is just absurd behavior. And now we are saying, okay, maybe you shouldn't bike. Maybe you should take a taxi.
Maybe you should dress different.
Maybe you should dress different. And that is exactly the same, because then you're changing the environment and hope, and do so by in the hope that ultimately the behavior of the person will change. Because you have
3%.
Yeah, you exactly of those 3%, and that is the sickest thing, that people are thinking, okay, but yeah, we don't know what is smart because 50-50. No, the people having absurd behavior is less than 5%. So you are adjusting your environment for...
So that 97% is adjusting themselves and calling other people out, like maybe you could change this, maybe you could change this, to make way for the 3% that is bothering the 97%.
Right, and that is sick.
It's super backwards.
Yeah. But and I think we can learn something from this. I think so. I think maybe we are talking about, right. So okay, how should Twitter proceed, and what should be the best for Twitter to do in a business sense, and maybe also in the user experience. But to be honest, I think this is almost a sign. If you would look at it from a helicopter view, there is so much more to learn, because this is just an example of how we solve things, or better to say, how we not solve things, but how we run away. It's almost like I did this when I was a child, when I was scared, or I had a feeling that maybe when I had a nightmare, I had a feeling that someone was coming for me. Then the best thing to do was go lay in bed and put something above my head, right? And that would give me like the sense of safety. And as a child, I was always thinking like, why are you doing this? Because I was scared that maybe someone with a hammer was standing in my room, and I was like, bro, what are you doing? Because the man with the hammer can still hit you, and he can still see you. So what are you doing? And I remember that I told myself, I'd rather die feeling so comfortable than putting the thing out and getting hit with the hammer on my head. So
you were at least a step ahead of me as a kid, because I was just like, well, what if it is true?
No, but you are just an optimist, right? You can see that.
Optimist. I think I was just very creative and superstitious. No, I don't know what for you it was a guy with an axe. For me it was an alien that had a laser focused on me, and I had to be completely still, otherwise he would shoot me.
Okay. Yeah, that's also kind of sad.
Yeah. But I think it's a very relatable for many people to have that, and indeed, I think you make it a very interesting point, and it relates quite to modern societies. Well, instead of trying to deal with the problem head on and make the most logical, rational solution, it's just like, okay, how do I feel as good as possible about the situation, so that when it all goes to shit, at least I'm here, smoking my doobie on my couch and just chilling.
Yeah. No, but for real, that is the one sentence what I'm trying to say, indeed. Yeah, no, for real. And I think this is an explanation for what we have discussed, not in the podcast, but in private conversations, that you can see as a result that companies are saying, sorry, we cannot help you. Sorry, we cannot do something for you. And that is the same, because like in essence it's about responsibility. Do you take it or not?
Yeah.
And like what you just described is like, no, I rather take not responsibility and feel good than I do not feel good and take responsibility. But like every great leader that has ever lived had a great sense and urge for responsibility, and it doesn't matter how he felt, because heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
And that's lost.
Indeed. No, I agree, and I've been completely and utterly annoyed by various companies refusing to have a phone number to call when there's a problem. However, when there's a problem for their side, they'll happily give you a ring. So yeah, that is something that has gone under my skin a little bit. But there was a last one that I just have to mention it because it was so absurd. I was calling the Action, which is just for us, it's like a convenience store, but like with office supplies and random necessities like Christmas trees and whatever. Anything random in your house that you need, you go to Action. So I wanted to get a poker set, and I was like, there's a good chance they have it at the Action. So I called the Action, and they're like, hello, if you are calling for an item or to talk with the person at the service desk, please press 1. So naturally I press 1, and the following is a message that says, we do not allow people to call to the store or to the front of the desk or to call for an items. You have to go in the store themselves to check out the inventory because it's always changing. Boop. Bro, I was so mad at that point. I was like, how are you getting away with this? It's really insane. And I mean, it's cutting down costs, it's preventing people from being screamed at work, making a friendlier environment, you could say. But I think indeed that the approach of, we're not taking responsibility, we do the bare minimum and we let other people figure itself out, it's a trend, and it's an ugly one.
Yeah. So you can see why it's a trend, because there are benefits for the businesses and the people don't really fight for the cause. So I do think that it's like a great comment, that it is a trend, but you don't want it to be a trend. And I think to make sure that it isn't a trend anymore, people have to take responsibility. That is what we maybe suggest to the companies, but then that counts. The same is true for us. Then we also have to be responsible. And being responsible as a consumer means that you fight for your causes. That you say, okay, some things are reasonable and some things aren't. And I think as long as we as consumers, as people, let things happen, we are not in a position to say that... or we are in a position to say that maybe some things are unfair or unreasonable, but we are the ones to change it. Because as a consumer, you hold the power. Power is it's like the one who pays determines. So if you are paying for it, then you demand change. And if you don't, then you have to look to a competitor who at least does something better in your opinion. But if you are like... we have 2 fast food chains, and you think one is not holding your values to right, to a level that you prefer. Another is, but you still go to the fast food chain because you like the food more, but it holds less of your values, then you are not contributing to the responsibility that such a business has to take.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you are not holding them accountable.
Exactly.
So my point is more like, if we ask if the solution should be or is probably taking responsibility, and we see that businesses don't have an incentive to be responsible, we should make them responsible.
Yeah, we should give them that incentive.
Yeah, and to hold them accountable.
Exactly. I agree. The other way that my mind was going was, well, one of two ways, which was I mentioned this already to you privately, but raise the wage of call assistants. And the other one would be to go for legislative response, to just make it illegal to do what they're doing right now, and that the people could also, in a sense, I almost hate saying it because of how much it gets done, but make a petition about it, and among the people that just forces companies to be able to be called for any problem. But indeed, because the one counter argument that I would say that favors my argument over yours, which would be to go to their competitor that is allowing that, would be that if everybody starts doing it because there is no incentive, then there's not going to be a competitor left to go to because they are claiming responsibility.
Not claiming responsibility.
Yeah, exactly, not claiming responsibility. Thanks. So I think that is something to watch out for, because, and also of course sometimes you have companies saying you have to go to them because it's a specific product from them, or it's a specific service that only they can deliver. So in those cases it's harder to go to the competition, even if their values do align more with your own. So in that sense.
Okay, no, and then I think that's super fair, right? But in the end, so then you could say, let's say that we are like in a dead point where companies are not acting responsible and don't have an incentive to act responsible, right? But then, and let's assume that there are no competitors, and if they are doing the same. In other words, are equal. Your case. Then as a consumer, knowing that you hold the power, that you determine ultimately what's going to happen, and by only that way of reasoning you are already holding people accountable, then you will see that now the companies have an incentive to deviate from the strategy, because now they know that you value it. And I mean, it's the same for let's take cheese, for example. If you want to sell a bunch of cheese the next decade, I can tell you one thing: it has to be sustainable. If you don't, you're out of business. I can tell you that. And that is just because we know that people hold businesses accountable if they don't. And that is the thing. As long as you just say, I only buy products that I know are sustainable, resourced at least, so there's no child labor, and the environment is taken care of. That those are at least 2 points that the manufacturer of the product I'm buying has to take responsibility for, and if not, then he has to pay or compensate the people or the environment who are affected. Then you will see that a company has an incentive to deviate and to change. And so,
you actually make a great case. I think it's a very fair point. So indeed, if everybody becomes or refuses to take responsibility, the one company that will be rewarded for it, as long as the people have their principles in order and their value structure. Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's also a great point to end on.
Yeah, no, it is, and I think that's also why you see why it doesn't happen. Why? Because a lot of people have a short memory, and they forget things. So if you have a short memory, in other words, forget things, and you don't act to your virtues, to your principles, then there will be no change. The only change is if you stand by your own opinion, by your virtues, by your values, consequently, and act upon them. And if you don't, then who are you to tell someone else to take responsibility? You are not willing to take responsibility for your own values. So how can you tell a company to do so, and then expect to change, right?
I think I was a preacher last episode, but you've adopted the teacher has become the master.
Yeah. Most that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. This has been Tom.
I'm Jala.
And thank you for listening. And don't forget, stay curious.
Bye.
See ya.